Welcome in, everybody. Let's get right into it. I think enough time has passed that we can talk about Rings of Power. We just got done with Season 2, and wow. Not a good wow, either, by any means. This was absolutely atrocious. It may be able to count the amount of things that are done right, because there are so few. That would probably be easier to do than counting the amount of things that are wrong with this show, because then this episode would go on forever. But let's just mention a few highlights, shall we? Because we don't want a 2-minute episode, so here we go. Now, we're just talking probably the worst of the worst here. All of the events that take place in both seasons 1 and 2, they're supposed to take place over the course of thousands of years. And in the show, all of what happens in both seasons takes place over about a month's worth of time. Everything happens real close together. So it's already kind of convoluted and confusing. I think there's really 3 big things that bug me the most. Firstly, Gandalf and the other wizards are already in Middle-earth when they're not supposed to be here until the Third Age. The Dark Wizard, who is most likely one of the 2 unnamed blue wizards, literally says that the 5 Istari came to Middle-earth. And I'm like, but hold on, wait though. They're not supposed to have been. They come to Middle-earth to fight Sauron. That's their whole mission. Well, Sauron's not been in power for quite some time now. So we just changed the whole reason for the Istari wizards, who are what are called Maiar. They're a lower tier of angel in this world that Tolkien made. And the Valar send these 5 Maiar, these 5 wizards, these 5 lesser angels, to Middle-earth to fight Sauron. And, well, hey, you know what? Let's just chunk that right out the window. Here we go. And Gandalf gets his name, by the way, by having all of the pre-Gollum hobbits call him Grand Elf, which, why? He gets called Gandalf by the men of Arnor way later. His actual Maiar name, his angelic name, is Alorin. His elven name is Mithrandir. We hear him get called Mithrandir in the movies, and the dwarves call him Thrarkun. So, yeah, the whole Gandalf reveal thing was kind of eye-rolly. The name reveal was really eye-rolly moments for me. I think kind of for everybody else too. And the reveal that he is Gandalf, everyone just kind of looked around and go, well, yeah, we knew that. We of course he is. You spent a whole season dragging it out like he wasn't going to be Gandalf for no reason to set up this pre-Shire, pre-Lord of the Rings female Sam and Frodo connection, and are you doing that so Gandalf will have a reason to feel this close kinship with hobbits? Because hobbits were the first people that connected with him and found him whenever he came falling out of the sky like a meteor, instead of, on one of the boats in the Grey Havens over from Valinor, like he was supposed to. And for that matter, how did all the other wizards get here? Did they come by meteor, or did they travel on boats to the Grey Havens from Valinor, like how they were supposed to? This raises not good questions. All of this show raises not good questions, for that matter. But you want your show to make people think, right? If you're going for a highbrow fantasy, which Lord of the Rings is so lore dense and really steeped in its own histories and languages, and mirroring our world and real world language and religion and histories, and it's really interwoven and complex. So of course, if you just read the Lord of the Rings books, or maybe you just watch the Peter Jackson films, then, and I'm talking the Lord of the Rings trilogy, not The Hobbit, then you're leaving with a ton of questions. A lot is not answered. But that's good. You want to leave some to the imagination. I recently had a critique of a story that I wrote where I was way too detail heavy, and I should leave bits out to allow the audience to think through things and let them make connections and let them figure out what's going on. And I think the same is very true for Tolkien's work. Mind you, Tolkien is incredibly detail-oriented. He is stupidly detail-heavy. He spends the whole 3 pages talking about pipeweed and a tree. Like, this guy is king of details. But his books are not, they're not Harry Potter. They're not 800 pages, right? You can get through them fairly quickly. Most grade schoolers read Lord of the Rings as part of their English curriculum. So, yeah, this show so far is not doing great with where it leads its audience, what kind of questions it leaves the audience with, and what it gives in terms of answers to what happened in season 1, maybe, or what happened before the show happened. They give this really misconstrued and wrong and altered interpretation of how the First Age went and what happened in Valinor. That Morgoth destroyed the 2 trees instead of him leading the great spider from the dark to drink the sap of the trees, and Ungoliant would get all super fat and chonk on it, and they would escape across this great land bridge, and they would draw the elves and the Valar, and they would do this whole huge war, and then Ungoliant would turn on Morgoth, and Morgoth would have to summon up a whole bunch of Balrog fiery demons. Like, no, none of that. None of that is there. It's just, yeah, Morgoth did this thing, and now there's evil in the world. It's just that. It really is. The show tries very hard to be what Peter Jackson made in several instances. And it doesn't work. It's very obvious what they're trying to do. But there's paying homage to something that was inspirational and laid the groundwork for what you're doing. And then there's just straight ripping off. And you can guess which route this show takes. Okay, so the second thing that really bothers me about the show is Sauron. Sauron is portrayed as this complex kind of anti-hero villain guy who cries, and he's weak and vulnerable and has this weird obsession with Galadriel that's almost sensual. It's mixed with wanting to strangle her, which, depending on who you ask, it's just weird. It's really weird, and it's wrong. They do the same thing with the orcs, which is especially strange. The orcs now have families and babies. There's baby orcs. And the orcs are very concerned about their families. They have relationships. They show the orcs as being weak and vulnerable and empathetic instead of, literal evil that was created by the Tolkien version of Satan. But hey, it's all about creative vision, right? The almighty creative vision of the Amazon production team. Just, how could you do this? How could you do this to one of the greatest villains of literary history? How could you just neuter Sauron? It's mind-blowing. I think that the director, the exec producers, the head writer, I think they all got together and said, hey, we're going to do our own thing. And then there's maybe people on the writing team, maybe some other producers, maybe a director here or there. Maybe there's some conglomerate of people that are like, oh, what we're doing is horrific. What we're doing is blasphemous. Or maybe I'm just being silly and there's no camp of rebut. Maybe there's no resistance to any of this, and everybody's on board, and everyone's like, yeah, we're gonna take one of the most evil characters in all of fiction, and we're gonna make him cry. We're going to make him weak. Why? I'm not scared of that guy. That's not a villain that I fear. I'm not scared of... You remember that scene in Rogue One, the famous Vader hallway scene? I saw that in theaters, and as soon as Vader's lightsaber lights up that dark hallway, and you hear the music, there were people in the audience screaming. There were people acting like they were seeing a horror movie. Like, that is what you want out of your villain. It doesn't have to be always. It doesn't have to be every second of the production. It can come in spurts. It can come in waves. It can come in singular moments where this villain is all powerful. This villain is all evil. And there's no escape. We don't get that with this version of Sauron. We just don't. And if you're not going to have a compelling villain, you don't have a compelling story as far as Lord of the Rings goes. As far as fantasy genre or sci-fi for that matter, yeah, it's just nothing is keeping me engaged whatsoever. Now, thirdly, before this gets away from me, the thing that really frickin' bugs me, the designs for the characters have little to no imagination or authenticity to them. It looks like the costume and character designers tried to make the dwarves, elves, hell, even the orcs all just look more human. The dwarf women are still beardless. The elves are not pure and perfect creations of the Valar like they're supposed to be. Because if you imagine an angel creating a person by hand, could you imagine that person being anything less than perfect? You can't? Oh, well, this show's creative team couldn't either. So, yeah. Then you have the men of Numenor. They're all led astray just way too easy. They're given this really party city kind of armor and weapons, and they just look plastic. I think one thing that these teams paradoxically do get right is the scale of everything that we get. Places like Khazad-dûm and Eregion, they actually look like the big kingdom capitals. They kind of do fit the descriptions of what they're actually supposed to be. But that's about as good as it gets in this show. It's that one tiny little bit. But anything else, man. I mean, the way that the orcs look, the way the elves look, the dwarves, the armor. The armor looks like it was just a really stiff shirt that the men of Numenor wear, that Isildur wears. It just looks like someone gave him a painted cardboard frock. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? I could get over all of this if, the story was done correctly. But none of the story is told in the correct pattern. It's not told in the correct age. Characters are made up that don't matter. Other characters they're bastardized to death, like Tom Bombadil, Celebrimbor, Galadriel. Don't get me started on Elrond. There are constant lines being dropped as well that are meant to remind us that the show is connected to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And that's real weird. Why? I'll tell you why. It's because they probably realize, we can't stand on our own. We have to have some kind of crutch. And what better crutch than nostalgia? Nostalgia is the only thing that's going to connect us to our core audience and get us through this shit fest. Otherwise, why? I mean, none of them obviously did the required reading. None of them read the Silmarillion, the Children of Hurin, any of the compendiums or histories. Nothing. I doubt they even read the actual Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit. I don't think they read any of it. There's also, going back to the characters that were bastardized to death, there's this really weird will they, won't they kind of relationship tension between Elrond and Galadriel, which is bizarre, because at this point, Galadriel is supposed to be married to Celeborn, have had a daughter, who then marries Elrond at the beginning of the Third Age. Oh, and speaking of things that don't happen yet, the Balrog, Durin's Bane. That sucker isn't supposed to pop up until the Third Age. Like halfway through the third, in 1980, for God's sake. What are we doing? This is the middle of the well, I don't even know if we're in the middle of the Second Age. Not really. You can kind of anchor yourself to where you are in Tolkien's history by what's going on in the story, right? You can't do that in this show. Shit's everywhere. I have no idea where we are. Are we in the Third Age with the Balrog popping up, or are we in the latter third of the Second Age, where Eregion gets sacked? Oh, and by the way, it only gets sacked after Sauron spends a little over, almost 1,000 years with Celebrimbor, making the 9 rings for men and the rings for the dwarves. Funny thing is, he doesn't help Celebrimbor make the rings for the elves, which is another weird thing that they do in this show. The elven rings are supposed to be free of Sauron's taint completely. Taint. But they're not supposed to be influenced by Sauron whatsoever. But here we are. Gotta hurry up and make these things, because we only have, 8 episodes per season? So we gotta get these rings cranked out of here. You think we can do a show correctly that has a timeline of over 3,000 years? Nah, man. Of course not. I think probably the saddest thing is just how unimaginative and criminally underutilized all of the characters are, especially Sauron. And speaking of him, to really understand just how criminal what they're doing is, these are just a few things that Sauron does in the books and the histories of Tolkien's world. Okay? Sauron starts off working for the first Dark Lord, Melkor. He's a spy, right? He's a spy in the homeland of the angels, the Valar. He then leads this huge war against the first elves, right? He fights this huge dude named, I think it's Juan the Wolfhound, June the Wolf, I forget the Wolfhound's name, but he fights this giant dude that's a Wolfhound, and Sauron turns into a werewolf himself to fight this guy. He tears his throat out, and he flies away as this giant vampire bat. Okay? Then we get Big Bad Morgoth, his boss. He gets pwned and beaten and thrown into the outer void while Sauron escapes. Okay, so the Dark Lord, the Satan of the universe, gets thrown into nothingness, literal outer void nothingness, and Sauron manages to escape. Okay, that's who Sauron is. He's cunning and powerful, both physically and mentally. He's able to escape an army of angels and elves where his boss can't. Imagine you trying to escape God where Satan can't, and you do it. Be kind of tricky, wouldn't it? Well, Sauron did it. And what do we get in the Rings of Power show? A dude that cries and gets betrayed by a bunch of unionized orcs who are demanding something. That's never really made clear why the orcs rebel against Sauron, which they never do. They never have done. And then Sauron slunks away as a black ooze. What hot garbage. You mean to tell me that the Dark Lord of 2 whole ages, the second and the third age, that could transform into a werewolf and a vampire bat, that could manipulate enemy kings and armies, that could deceive whole civilizations of literal angels for hundreds of years, is all watered down to basically a weakling version of Voldemort from Harry Potter? If you know me, you know that my favorite part of any story is going to be the villains. I can forgive a dull, boring protagonist if there's a stupendous villain on the other side. But to royally screw up one of the biggest, baddest, most cruel and evil villains in all of fantasy fiction, yeah, your show is worse than trashy fan fiction. I'll take whatever Homestuck, Reddit, 4chan bullshit is out there over this. I'll take the Shannara Chronicles over this. Also, I just can't. It's just so damn sad to me that this keeps happening. We've had this kind of dreck with the Halo TV show, with the Resident Evil show in the Netflix movie, with the Acolyte, and now with the Agatha All Along show as well. That's another show that's quickly going down the drain. We keep getting shows that have the most massive budgets, the best personnel thrown at them, and for what? Nothing but anger. Nothing but angry people. The studios hate the fans now, and they say that it's all their fault that the shows fail. The creative teams saying that what matters most is their vision, instead of delivering what the audiences actually want to see. It's nightmarish. The times where fans actually come together and love a show or a product, I mean, it's long gone. We get 1 or 2 shows or movies now and then, like, I don't know, The Last of Us, Fallout, Deadpool 3. And with those things, I would say that most people actually do love the product. And it's a great boon and reprieve from what is now the norm. Like this Rings of Power garbage. No. This is another show that yet again is splitting the fandom. Most Tolkien lore loyalists hate the show. Whereas, you might have casual fans that may actually really enjoy it. But then you also have troublemakers who either haven't seen the show and they just want to fake champion a cause, or who don't know the lore but love to stir up trouble. Those people will be the keyboard warrior online clashers that make things just look so much worse. Or rather, they'll help make things be worse than they actually are. But as someone who is a Tolkien loyalist, I would say that the Rings of Power need to go the way of the Halo TV show, the Shannara Chronicles, the Acolyte, and hopefully the Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time got a major delay, and there hasn't been an announcement that another season is going to go to production. It needs to stop. All of this needs to stop. I mean, Rings of Power is a clear bastardization of what Tolkien made, and it's abhorrent. I know people are done playing nice about this. I don't care anymore about people's sensitivities and that different shows work for different people and some things just won't be for me. I know that. I know I'm not going to love everything. But I call bullshit. It's happened too many times, too egregiously, and with too much pride. None of these people fuck up and then own it. The team behind the Halo TV disaster, the Halo TV show disaster, none of them owned any of their failure. The same thing happened with Acolyte. They blamed the fans. They blamed misogyny and racism. And I think Amanda Listenberg, however you say her name is, Amanda Listenberg blamed conservative right-wing groupthink or whatever. What? Cry me a river. Get over it. This is crazy. I mean, people can't say, yeah, we flubbed it up. We did a bad job. The directing wasn't great. These actors didn't get along. The writers didn't do their homework enough. We had a short in production, so we had to snub the costume and makeup departments. Something. Give me a reason that things are just terrible, but they can't. The only things that these teams and their actors and their directors, the only things that they will say, if they say anything, is it's the fans' fault, and we blame all the isms, racism, transphobic-ism, whatever, misogyny. I guess there's more than just isms in there, isn't there? But yeah, in the real world, people are expected to own up to their faults and their mistakes. And that's a big thing that I think everyone is kind of tired of, is none of these folks will do that. And it's driving people away, I think. I mean, can people who were, say, Warcraft fans growing up, people that played Warcraft, like Warcraft 3 or Warcraft 2, the original real-time strategy games for the computer, those fans who also read the books and bought the miniatures and all that kind of good stuff, but pre-World of Warcraft, right? Pre-WoW. Can those people honestly tell me that they were happy with the Warcraft movie? I will bet my hat that they can't. But things like that have been done far too often. And people like me are sick of it. I think we are absolutely correct in voicing that outrage and boycotting any such travesty like the Rings of Power. Well, guys, that is all I had time for today. Thank you so much for tuning back in. Stick around for more Sci-Fi Unchained. But for now, live long and prosper, my friends, and may the Force be with us all.